Every single recession in the last 50 years was predicted, and almost nobody listened. Not because the signals weren't there, not because the data was hiding, but because the signals that actually work aren't the ones getting wall-to-wall coverage on financial media. They're buried in freight reports, bond spreads, and government indexes that most people walk right past without a second glance. Here's the thing that should stop you cold. JP Morgan currently puts the probability of a US recession in 2026 at 35%. Moody's puts it at 42%. These aren't fringe predictions from doomsayers on the internet. These are the biggest financial institutions in the world, and they're watching a very specific set of signals that retail investors almost never track. So what are those signals? What does the data actually say right now? And more importantly, what do you do about it before the rest of the country figures it out? Let's get into it. The first signal, and the one that has the longest track record of any economic indicator, is the yield curve. Specifically, the inversion of the yield curve. And before you check out thinking this is too technical, stick with me, because once you understand this, you'll never look at interest rates the same way again. Here's the basic idea. Under normal conditions, if you lend money to the government for 10 years, you get paid more interest than if you lend it for just 3 months. That makes sense. You're locking up your money longer, so you should be compensated more. But sometimes that relationship flips. Short-term rates go above long-term rates. That's an inversion. And when it happens, historically, a recession follows. The track record on this is almost unnerving. The yield curve has inverted 28 times since 1900. In 22 of those cases, that's 79%, a recession followed. For every recession going back to the 1960s, the curve inverted first. The lead time runs anywhere from 6 months to 36 months. The San Francisco Fed puts the average at 12 to 24 months. Now here's where it gets really interesting for right now. From late 2022 through December 2024, the US yield curve was inverted for over 2 years, the longest inversion in 45 years. 2+ years of short-term rates sitting above long-term rates. The inversion finally resolved. The curve turned positive again, sitting at about 53 basis points as of late 2025. But here's what nobody's talking about. The resolution of an inversion doesn't signal safety. It often signals that the danger is getting closer. Historically, recessions don't arrive during the inversion. They arrive after it ends. You should be watching the aftermath, not celebrating the all clear. Think of it like a pressure system in weather. The storm doesn't hit while the pressure is building. It hits when that pressure releases. Now, the yield curve is powerful, but it's one piece. The second signal is where things get ugly fast, and it's one that Wall Street traders watch like a hawk while the rest of us aren't paying any attention at all. Credit spreads. Credit spreads measure the gap in interest rates between safe government bonds and corporate bonds. When companies borrow money, they pay more than the government does. That extra amount is the spread, and the size of that spread tells you exactly how much fear is in the market. When times are good, companies with decent credit pay only a small premium over treasuries. But when investors start getting nervous, when they sense that businesses might struggle to pay their debts, they demand more compensation for that risk. The spread widens, and that widening is one of the most reliable recession signals in existence. The numbers are stark. Every US recession since the 1970s has been accompanied by investment-grade credit spreads widening by at least 150 basis points and high-yield spreads widening by 400 basis points or more. Every single one. No exceptions. Where are we right now? Investment-grade spreads are sitting near historic lows, around 77 basis points as of early 2026. At first glance, that sounds fine, but think about what that actually means. There is almost no room to tighten from here, and an enormous amount of room to blow out wider. JP Morgan expects investment-grade spreads to widen to around 110 basis points by year-end 2026. And in the junk bond market, the canary in the coal mine for corporate stress, the lowest-rated bonds, the CCC tier, have already seen risk premiums widen by 156 basis points in 2025 alone. That's the part of the credit market where the weakest companies borrow money, and those companies are already under pressure. When credit stress shows up at the bottom first, it tends to work its way up the ladder. It always does. Here's a question most people never ask. Before a recession hits your job, your investments, and your savings account, what industry feels it first? The answer is trucking. Freight and trucking data is one of the most overlooked leading indicators available. Think about it logically. Trucks move everything. Retail goods, industrial supplies, raw materials, food, construction materials. When economic activity starts slowing, businesses order less, manufacture less, and ship less. That shows up in freight volumes before it shows up anywhere else, before job losses, before GDP revisions, before Wall Street downgrades. The Cass Freight Index tracks North American freight activity across every major shipping mode, and the data it's been putting out is not encouraging. The index declined 5.5% in 2023, then dropped another 4.1% in 2024, and volumes through 2025 remain well below 2024 levels. Trucking companies are getting crushed. Public truckload carriers saw net profit margins hit a 15-year low in the first quarter of 2025, just 2.4%. That's not a healthy industry. That's an industry in survival mode, and it matters to you even if you've never driven a truck in your life. When freight is down, manufacturing orders are down. When houses slow hiring, consumer spending eventually follows. Freight doesn't just move goods, it moves economic momentum. And right now, that momentum is stalling, which brings us straight to the next signal, the ISM Manufacturing PMI. The ISM Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index is a monthly survey of purchasing executives at US manufacturers. These are the people who actually sign off on buying raw materials, hiring workers, and expanding production. They know before anyone else whether business is picking up or slowing down. The index runs from 0 to 100. Above 50 means expansion. Below 50 means contraction. US manufacturing registered 47.9 in December 2025, the 10th straight month below 50. 10 consecutive months of contraction in American manufacturing. Every month for almost a year, the people who run these factories have been pulling back, not expanding, cutting orders, not increasing them. Now, manufacturing alone doesn't always mean a full recession. The broader economy can carry on even when factories slow down. But when manufacturing stays below 50 for this long, historically it tends to drag the rest of the economy with it eventually. And when you combine a sustained PMI contraction with the freight data, with widening credit spreads, with a post-inversion yield curve, you're not looking at one flashing warning light, you're looking at a dashboard full of them. And then there's the signal that tracks all of this together, the Conference Board Leading Economic Index, or the LEI. Think of it as the economy's composite health score. It pulls together 10 separate indicators: stock prices, building permits, manufacturing orders, consumer expectations, interest rate spreads, and rolls them into one number. When that number falls consistently, it's telling you something the individual data points can miss. The LEI declined in both October and November of 2025. It continued falling through December 2025, then fell again in March 2026, down 0.6% in that month alone, dropping to 97.3. Over the 6-month stretch from September 2025 to March 2026, it fell 1.0%. The Conference Board itself is projecting economic growth to slow significantly in 2026. Now, a declining LEI doesn't guarantee a recession, but here's the historical pattern. When the LEI falls for 6 or more consecutive months, and the drop is broad-based across multiple components, recession has followed in nearly every instance going back to the 1960s. We're not at that threshold yet, but we're tracking in that direction across multiple readings. So you've got 5 signals: the post-inversion yield curve, widening credit spreads in the riskiest debt, freight volumes stuck below prior year levels for 2 straight years, manufacturing PMI in contraction for 10 straight months, and a leading economic index that keeps falling. No single one of these guarantees a recession. Together, they paint a picture that serious investors aren't ignoring. So what do you actually do about it? Step 1. Build your financial shock absorber. If a recession hits and your income takes a hit, your hours get cut, you get laid off, your business slows, the thing that keeps you from making catastrophic decisions with your investments is having cash on hand, not stocks. Cash. 3 to 6 months of living expenses, minimum. If your income is variable or you're self-employed, push that to 9 months. Keep it in a high-yield savings account where it's earning something. During every recent recession, the people who panicked and sold their investments near the bottom were almost always the ones who didn't have a cash buffer and needed the money. Don't be that person. Step 2. Attack your high-interest debt right now. This is urgent. Consumer credit card interest rates are still sitting above 20% for most Americans. If a recession arrives, job losses follow, and if you're carrying $10,000 or $15,000 in credit card debt at 22% when your income drops, that debt compounds faster than you can manage it. Pay it down aggressively before economic conditions force you to juggle it defensively. This is the one financial move that delivers a guaranteed return. Eliminating a 22% interest rate is a 22% guaranteed return on your money. No investment can promise you that. Step 3. Rotate toward defensive assets. This doesn't mean panic selling everything. It means gradually rebalancing towards sectors and assets that historically hold up better when the economy contracts. Consumer staples companies, the ones making food, household products, basic necessities, tend to keep generating revenue even when consumers cut back on discretionary spending. Utilities, healthcare, high-quality dividend-paying stocks with strong balance sheets, and short-duration treasury bonds or CDs, which give you safety and yield without long-term interest rate risk. The goal isn't to predict the exact bottom, it's to reduce your exposure to the parts of the market that get hit the hardest when things turn. Step 4. Build a second income stream before you need one. This sounds obvious until you realize how many people wait until they're already facing a layoff to start thinking about it. A side income doesn't have to be large to matter. Consulting in your professional field, freelancing a skill you already have, a rental property, an online course, something that generates income outside of your primary job. In a recession, companies cut employees. They're much slower to cut contractors and independent service providers who deliver specific results. Being needed in more than one place is financial protection that no stock portfolio can replicate. Step 5. Invest in skills that make you harder to cut. Every recession reshuffles the job market. The workers who come out ahead are the ones who were already building capabilities that organizations couldn't easily replace. Data analysis, project management, sales, coding, financial modeling. These aren't aspirational suggestions. They're the skills that keep people employed when companies are choosing who stays and who goes. A few $100s and a few hours a week in professional development right now could be worth tens of thousands in retained income if a downturn hits. Treat it as seriously as you treat your investment portfolio, because it is one. Here's what separates the people who come out of recessions stronger from the people who come out of them set back by years. Preparation time. The signals we've talked about today, the yield curve, credit spreads, freight data, manufacturing PMI, the leading economic index, none of them are secret. The data is public. The history is documented. The pattern is consistent. What most people lack isn't information. It's the discipline to act on that information before the crisis makes the decision for them. By the time a recession is officially declared, it's already been happening for months. By the time layoffs make the news, the companies made those decisions quarters earlier. By the time the stock market bottoms out, the smart money has already repositioned. The advantage in personal finance almost always goes to the person who acted early, not the one who waited for confirmation. You don't need to be an economist to read these signals. You just need to know where to look. So I want to know, which of these 5 indicators surprised you the most? Was it the freight data? The credit spreads? Drop it in the comments below, because I'm genuinely curious how many people were already tracking these versus hearing about them for the first time here. If this changed how you're thinking about your finances, hit the like button. It helps more people find this before they need it. And share it with someone in your life who's been too comfortable assuming the economy just keeps rolling upward forever. Make sure you're subscribed, because next week we're getting into exactly which types of assets have outperformed in every recession since 1980. And the answer will probably surprise you. The signals are already in the data. The only question is whether you're paying attention.